Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fourth and Florida, the show where we look at the different major Florida schools and talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and also we will be going through this week talking about all the Week 1 games, maybe talking a little bit about Week 0 with Jesse, and we may give some schedule predictions. Sorry we missed it last week. How's everyone doing tonight?
Well, doing a lot better than Jesse is tonight.
I knew it was coming.
You knew that you said you were going to talk about the ugly and the bad, and I think that borderlines on both sides of that. I mean, you did get beat by a former UCF football coach. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I would rather leave Week 0 in Ireland, but it is what it is. The record follows you. But yeah, man, just hopefully we can turn the page and relatively quick. But yeah, sorry we missed last week. Obviously, it's a busy time for all of us getting into the season, but that's why we're excited to be back with you guys for another episode. And I just wish I could like Men in Black flash myself to forget Week 0, but it is what it is. You just got to roll with the punches, right?
At least both teams had fun, right?
I guess that I don't know that we had fun, but I guess that's all that matters. There was plenty of Guinness to drown our sorrows, though. At least
that's where I was going to say. Hopefully, everybody was forgetting about it with a little bit of slancha as they were out there. I did hear from some people that were there that I knew. They said the FSU fans were out in force pregame and postgame, not so much. So I imagine they were all in bars.
Yeah, I'm sure. They said it was a really great turnout. I mean, I will give them that. It sounded like a home game all the way over there. They estimated we had around 30,000 people make the trip, so that's pretty cool.
It does sound like a home game.
That was a Miami home game maybe, but 30,000 would be giving them way too much credit.
12, dude. Come on.
Probably about 3,000. There's a extra zero in there somewhere.
There you go. Well, I'm excited because we actually get to play this week, and I'm going to the game. We're recording tonight on Wednesday night, which means I'm one sleep from us watching our first UCF game of the season. Unfortunately, it's against New Hampshire, but at the same time, I'd like to avoid the pitfalls that Jesse.
I wish we played New Hampshire.
So I'm excited because as far as keys to the game are concerned, what's the key? You show up, right? It's New Hampshire. No disrespect to those guys, but it's just another level when it comes to FCS. There's a reason they call them body bag games, right? They did lose their starting quarterback from last year. That was pretty good for them. They lost their running back last year. They lost their starting wide receiver last year. So according to our coaches, their defensive ends are about all they've got. So it'll be really interesting. What I'm looking to see from the team, though, is are they putting it together? Obviously, against New Hampshire, we're not going to see, all of the game plan, right? We don't need to pull that out. So I expect it to be a little vanilla. But I'm going to be expecting to see, hey, are our guys plugging the A gap? Are we in the right position? Are we communicating? Go ahead, laugh, Daniel. We laughed yesterday about that one. Are we in the right position? Are our linebackers scraping? Like, are we hitting the way that we should be? Because like many others, obviously everybody gets hyped preseason about all the great things that are happening, and nobody has a bad highlight tape, right? So for us, this season was all about coming together, getting our aggression back, making sure that we've got the defensive pieces to compete both from a size perspective and from an aggression perspective and finding our why. And it seems like the team, from everything I've seen, has done that. The question is what does it look like on an actual football field? Having played football, it's a little bit different, and you have to get your licks in, to get back in game shape, because it's in the off season, you're scrimmaging against each other, but it's just not the same thing. So for me, the New Hampshire game, I expect to enjoy it. I expect there to be a lot of touchdowns. Actually, on our podcast, Nightline. Wow, that was my old one. The Knighted Ones podcast. We actually predicted a 63-10 win. And, for me, though, what I'm really looking for is third stringers in by maybe third quarter, a fun time, a lot of tailgating, and it's going to be cooler weather. So it'll only be in the 80s. So I'm excited about that, too.
Yeah, you can't beat that. I mean, the weather really is a big part of it. That's why I like looking forward to our game on Monday night, and we'll let Daniel get into the big matchup of the weekend. I'm just glad it's a night game because those games can be rough. But I think you're right, man. With that one, you just want to see them go against somebody else, right? You want to see them put it all together, flow well, and just avoid injuries. And that's really what you want to see. Get your young guys some reps and get in and get out. Let them get their paycheck, give them a beat down, have some fun at the tailgate, and move on to the next one.
Unfortunately, the next one for us is a bye week. So, we'll probably win against the bye. So we'll be 2-0. But it's going to
never underestimate.
Yeah, but it's going to suck when everybody else is on the, is playing and we're stuck at home. So
yeah,
it's kind of a letdown. Like you go all season, off season long, you get to watch your first game. And then as soon as the first game's over, then you got to sit for another week and watch everybody play. So it's a little bit of a letdown. I hate those early bye weeks, but hey, we'll take it. It's UCF football. It's back and I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had that experience before. I think it was 2017. Florida ended up having the second game of the season, losing to Michigan and Dallas to open. And then Hurricane comes in and you don't have a game week 2. And so it definitely sucked waiting. Of course, then Tennessee came to town the next week and one of the most memorable endings in Florida history. So it works out sometimes.
Yeah. Hey, we're praying for a bye week right now, so that's all I'm saying.
Well, you guys turn around and play again. You went home early, didn't you? Did you guys stick around or did you go home early? One of the teams did because you had to turn around and play the next Saturday, and it was going to be a short week.
That might have been Georgia Tech, but we stayed on Sunday, and so the team could have a little bit of experience of going overseas and stuff like that. But they came back on Monday, so that's why we get a little bit of a hangover, a little bit of an extended wait for Boston College on Monday, and then that following Saturday will be a bye week, so that'll kind of get us back on our normal Saturday schedule. So it's pretty disjointed, but at least you kind of get a couple games in early, get that bye week, and then you get back on track. But with the week 0 game, we actually have 3 bye weeks this year, which is really confusing because they went to 2 and then week 0 gets the extra one. So it's just, it's kind of crazy, but it all works out.
Just real quick, if you had to say the top 3 things why FSU ended up how they did, what were they? And we talked about DJU a little bit last week and where you felt he was in not last week, but the week before last, where he was in the quarterback ratings and what you saw out of him. What did you think about that after seeing him play a live game against Georgia Tech? And I will say this, I'm going to put an asterisk on this. Georgia Tech was a good football team. They played George O'Leary ball. There were only 14 possessions, 7 apiece. And I saw this style of football over and over again as a UCF fan under George O'Leary, and Brent Key employed it perfectly. In fact, George O'Leary was in Ireland and watched the game. So, but where does that leave you as an FSU fan, and what were the 3 top things that you saw that were missing?
Well, I will tell you the top takeaway is that the new clock rules suck. There was a lot of running in that game, so that had a lot to do with it too. But I mean, both teams only got 7 possessions the entire game, and so those new clock rules are tough, man, because I think it's going to take some time for people to adjust to that. But really, man, I think first off, and I don't know that this is not on Florida State, but I think one of the top takeaways for me was, and I had, to be frank, man, I had warned a lot of people about this in our fan base over the offseason. Georgia Tech's a better team than they get credit for. I mean, granted, it was a Brock Bowers-less Georgia. That offense gave them trouble. Brock Bowers don't play defense. They had the second highest yards per play against Georgia last year, and that was a top 5 defense. So, that Georgia Tech team, if you screw around, they will beat you. Really, man, I think the top takeaway for me, and this is why I hope this game serves as a gut check, Georgia Tech wanted it more than we did. I mean, we have the talent edge, we have size and all that good stuff, and they pushed us around. I mean, it was just they wanted it more than we did, and that's something that we did in 2022. We weren't the best team all the time, but we went out and just took games from people, and that's kind of what they did here. We lost the battle on the line of scrimmage. I think that's really what killed us more than DJU. I also will say that I think the defense, man, we got exposed for some things. We've joked on Randy Shannon. We've dunked on him a lot of times. We just recorded an episode on our show. Man, it's time. It's time to make a change. There's no reason our linebackers should be in the position that they are. The defensive line caught a lot of crap about that game, but I think a lot of it was they did their job and there was no one behind them to help. So we have some weaknesses, but I do think that, anytime you come into and granted, the transfer portal got us where we're at, right? And so you gotta lean on that. You gotta give credit to that. But you had a lot of new guys that were playing together for the first time. And so you had a lot of guys that looked like communication issues. They weren't in sync. They weren't playing team ball. And so I think that on the defensive side of things, even on the offense, it was just, there's so many fixable things there. And then the last thing I would say was DJU did not win you the game, but he did not lose you the game either. I mean, he had like 193, no touchdowns, but no turnovers, 70% completion percentage. I think really what went into DJU, first off, was I don't think the staff trusted him to throw the ball. And that was difficult because Georgia Tech was loading the box with 7-8 guys. They were blitzing almost every play. And we kept running into a loaded box. We refused to let DJ throw the ball down the field. Now, with that being said, DJU was DJU in the first game. I can't lie. His running was underwhelming. When you look at his passing, he missed a lot of wide open reads. He was late on a lot of throws, and the accuracy issues showed up. But he was 5 of 6 on passes from 10 to 19 yards when they finally took the handcuffs off and let him throw. So I think when you go back to the drawing board, if you just clean up the sloppy mistakes, you play inspired football, and you let – I think with DJU, you know what he is, man, but you got to live and die with his arm, or you got to go with Brock Glenn or something different. You didn't bring the guy who can throw the ball 80 yards here to – I think in the first half, he was 12 of 14 with 0.01 negative air yards. You got to let him throw the ball. And I think Mike Norvell knows that. And so I think you're going to see a much different game plan going forward. But I'll say this, and I'll end on this. I'll throw it back to you guys. I don't think it was as bad as it looked, right? It was. But I don't think the team is as bad as they played. You played as bad as you did, and Georgia Tech, who I feel is a solid team, still beat you on a walk-off field goal at the end of the game. With the new clock rules, had we got another possession, we probably take home the victory. Really, there's going to be a lot of close games where it just depends on who's got the ball last. But I said this on our show. I'm not pulling the panic alarm yet, but I have my hand on it. And if we lose to Boston College, I'm pulling it.
That's pretty prophetic, and also yeah, I mean, if you lose to BC, although BC is going to be an interesting case this year, we don't know what we're going to get out of BC this year, considering the momentum they started to build last year. So they're a better team than I think people give them credit for. But again, yes. FSU is FSU and should be FSU, especially with the expectations of Mike Norvell. I will say I have adjusted, and we'll get to this later in the show, but I mean, I have adjusted my win-loss record because, as a fan site who doesn't have access to practice, we can't scout the team until we see them play a game, just like everybody else. So I have backed off on my expectations a little bit, but I still think we can be a pretty good team if we just fix the mistakes. And you're right, Boston College, Thomas Castellanos, the guy's an X factor with his legs. It's just, can he pass or not? And I think Bill O'Brien's a good play caller. So, they saw Georgia Tech literally gift wrapped them a game plan to beat us. And so we have to make some adjustments fast. But I know we'll get into the record later. Yeah, and both, and I'll say this about Tommy C, he was a former UCF quarterback that transferred to Boston College. He's got feet. He's got wheels. And, their running back, actually, that's going to be starting this year is also a former UCF player who transferred out that didn't make it in our stacked running back room. Great player, and he'll have wheels and can hurt you with his feet too. So I agree with you. I think most teams are going to try to take that approach. I think for what really surprised me, and it didn't. What I saw from Georgia Tech was they were fundamentally sound. Yeah. Their linebacking play was phenomenal. They were in the right spots every single time. I will tell you that whatever that guy's name was, it started with an A, Ehlers or whatever it was, that middle linebacker that was there. Oh, you're talking about Kyle Eford, the one with the big neck roll? Yeah. Dude, I said, when we finally pull the trigger and get rid of Randy, I want Georgia Tech's linebacker if you can bring that guy with him. Yeah, exactly. Second half, Randy didn't come through in second half. That's what he called him at UCF when he was there. But, look, by and large, for me, it'll be really interesting to see how this FSU team responds.
Yep.
You've got size, you've got speed. Can you put it together? And more importantly, on the can you put it together, since you have so many transfers, they call it strain, and it's like kind of coach speak, but will they strain when they're down to make sure that they have that will to win? And
Right.
can DJU be that? I mean, I'll tell you this. I was watching the game. DJU on the sideline, the man looked like there were butterflies floating around. He was just like, do. I think part of that was confidence, but also part of that was, I mean, you want your quarterback on the sideline firing people up.
I agree.
You want your players doing that, not just sitting silently waiting for their turn. There's something to be said for quiet confidence, but at the same time, you want to get your guys motivated because teams that win are teams that are motivated by the team. So
no, you're 1,000% right, and that's one of the things that stood out to us too. If I had to name a number 4 on that list, I think it's we don't have that type of leader right now. No one has emerged. There's a lot of guys that are like a watch me work type of leader, but as you just said, man, you need that rally guy. You need that get in your face guy, and that's something that we've had on the good teams in the past. That's something we had a lot of last year, and we just don't have it yet. And so I think the transfer thing is an interesting perspective because when you look at this team. When you go back in the past and you look at like Auburn post Cam Newton, LSU post Joe Burrow, like the teams that went on those magical runs, like kind of like we did last year and then lost a significant portion of their team, they struggled after that. And I think the problem with Florida State right now is our roster, we talked about before, we have the highest blue chip ratio that we've had under Mike Norvell, but those can be deceiving because a lot of those blue chips can be your younger guys on the bottom half of the roster that aren't playing right now. And that's where we're at. The recruiting, we're kind of in that gap year right now where the young guys aren't quite ready and the older guys are a lot of transfers. We haven't recruited like Alabama and Clemson and Georgia. So we can't just plug in these guys and be like, oh, we lost 10 NFL draft picks. We're going to put 10 more in the roster. We're just not there yet. But we have a lot of talent. So I feel great about 25 and 26. I just think 2024 might be a bumpy ride to get there until you get that perennial recruiting power. But yeah, we need leadership right now in the worst kind of way. And it showed on Saturday.
Sounds like UCF. All right, Daniel, you haven't said anything. Why don't you do a little preview for us on your upcoming game that hopefully will turn out better than Jesse's?
Yeah, hopefully.
I just hope both teams lose. That's all I want. I just
hope bro, that ain't happening.
I at least said I hope both teams had fun in Ireland. Oh,
listen,
man.
Well, you guys can have fun just ending a tie or something.
I want the Gators to win because, we've got Colorado on the hype train. And when we beat Colorado, if we get through TCU and when we beat Colorado, if we beat that team, there's going to be a lot of hype there. And if Florida can get past Miami, I think that might be, a game day type of game in the swamp, night game, in-state rivalry type of game. Newly minted P4 versus old head P4 in the state of Florida. I think that could be really, really exciting and would draw a game day type of experience. So I'm excited about that. So Daniel, how are you guys going to beat Miami? Please tell me.
Oh my gosh. Well, right now you
start with badly.
Yeah.
You're going to beat them badly.
You want me to start? You want me to start on the best case scenario for sure. Usually I start on the worst case, work to the best case. But the best case scenario, blowing out Miami. I give Cam Ward more respect. I mean, we talked about on the show than many Gator fans do. But at the same time, he's not really been great on the road in his career, and he's never faced an atmosphere like he's going to face on Saturday, especially when you've got Gator fans who are known for being ridiculous 90,000, but now you've got first game Gator fans who still have hope. And a lot of Gator fans are like, this is the year we turn the corner with Billy Napier. So a lot riding on this game, but best case, Florida is able to slow down the Miami run game, put the ball into Cam Ward's hands. Miami's biggest strengths right now are Damian Martinez, who transferred in from Oregon State, and also Fletcher is their other running back. So we expect there to be more strength in that running game behind that O-line. than there is in the passing game. Not saying the passing game is going to be bad, but if we're talking best case scenario for Florida, we've shut down that running game, and then now we're putting the game into the hands of Ward with probably our best defensive line we've had and deepest in a while, with 93,000 screaming people and possible comms issues. I've heard that during the weekend there's some teams, especially on the road, having issues with the new in-helmet communication devices. Mm-hmm. So you throw that all together. If Florida can do that and then actually get their speedy guys like Eugene Lewis Wilson. You can tell it's been a long day for a few of us here when we do stuff like this. But anyways, Eugene Wilson, get Trey Wilson the ball early, often, open up the run game some. And I think that's how, again, briefly, Florida gets it done, is slowing down that Miami running game, maybe getting a few turnovers in the passing game, because one thing about Ward is he has, I think, 70 turnovers in his career.
A lot. Yeah.
It's like 26 interceptions or 36 interceptions and like 40 fumbles, something like that. But yeah, a ton. So if you can get him where he's holding on the ball to a lot longer in passing play, then Florida definitely has a chance. Again, a lot riding on this. Of course, a lot of Gator fans I talked about hoping it's going to turn a page. Of course, anywhere you look, whether it's On3 or Josh Pate or whatever, they're talking about the big, storyline, which is whichever coach loses, they're probably really on the hot seat. And I can tell you that is really true for Florida, whether it's, the patient fans, you could say, or whether it's the fans that are done after 2 losing seasons. A lot of people are like, 2 year 3 coaches, you got to win this game at home with a home field advantage because you've sold us on this is the year. You've heard Billy Napier say, this is my best team at Florida. Well, if it's your best team at Florida, you're facing a team that last year was 7-6 in the ACC, and SEC feels like we're stronger. And I've heard seen all offseason on Twitter and stuff, Florida fans saying, you play a much weaker conference. You had a better record only because of that. Well, if that's true, this is all about which coach can take their team to the next level between last year and this year. And so definitely a fun game, a fun tidbit that maybe those who are not Florida fans aren't aware of. Florida asked their fans to wear white. Miami is wearing all white uniforms, and a lot of Florida fans have said, forget that, I'm wearing blue because we, are rebellious. You can't even ask us usually to wear like blue to a Tennessee game. Someone's going to go wear whatever, but much less, hey, dress exactly like the opposing players. That didn't go over well. But, should be a fun Saturday and hot Saturday afternoon in the Swamp, and a big one. And I'll say starting off with a big game like this is much better, in my opinion. Granted, more risk, more reward, but much better than having 2 straight Saturdays like we had a few years ago, where it was start off with FAU and then you have USF the next week. And it's like, all right, when are we going to get to the real games?
We don't say that name on the show. They are the Cows, or the directionally challenged school from West Central Florida.
The Sun Bulls.
The Cows. We're just going to move them.
I will say one thing to your point on the head comms. I will say during our game, you saw Haynes King doing this a lot because he couldn't hear right. And then Mike Norvell came out today and said that there was a point, and I had wondered about this because they did a presentation on this when I was at ACC Media Days, where Georgia Tech went down. So they came over and they're like, you can't use it right now because it has to be fair. So it's still a work in progress for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think when you have a stadium of 90,000 people that are screaming, you might have a hard time. And I think after that first game, I think teams should have something in place. Keep the old system just in case that goes down, because it could play a point in that. But I will say, to give my thoughts on the game real quick, man, I do think with Miami, I don't think they're going to fire Cristobal unless they just have an exceptionally bad season, because they put so
what
much
about a clock management faux pas? Because you mentioned the 2-minute rule and how people were having trouble. Is this a possible faux pas for Mario Cristobal? this week.
Well, he doesn't have a victory formation, so I don't know if Cam Ward brings that over from Washington State or not. I mean, he has 2 knees, so hopefully he knows how to take one of them at least if Miami is in a position to win, because we know last year that didn't work out too well for those guys. But, man, I do think this is a really interesting game. I think the home field advantage is big for Florida. You know, I gotta throw a little shade and say that Tate Rodemaker went in there with 90,000 and beat him last year, but that was primarily because of the defense. That was not primarily because of Tate Rodemaker. But man, I think it's a huge game for both sides, and I really think that when you look at Miami, you're right. Cam Ward has so many turnovers. He takes a lot of sacks. That's another thing that he does. He's put up a lot of really impressive numbers, but it's because he throws the ball 500 times a season and he doesn't play any good defenses. We talked about this before on the quarterback show, where he has never faced a Power 4 now, top 25 passing defense. Never. So this is going to be one of his toughest challenges. And, you know, when you look at the Miami team, their big weakness is their secondary. So if you guys can get the ball in space to your playmakers, you know, running the ball, I think, might be a challenge because they have a pretty good front seven. But, you know, they did lose a lot on the interior, so maybe you can stay away from, you know, Ruben Bain and stuff like that if you can protect your quarterback. But, man, you know how Graham Mertz is. He's very efficient. If you can get that ball in space and with some playmakers, I think you have an opportunity here with the home field advantage. Because for me, man, with Miami, it's always like I'm not going to buy it until I see it. And I'm not super high on Cam Ward. I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't think he's Heisman level, you know, and I've told you guys in the past, like, I think I do lean Miami in this one, but, you know, I can't say I'm pulling for Florida because that's against my religion. But, you know, I kind of do want Florida to get this one because Florida has a much tougher schedule and somebody needs to quiet the offseason champs.
And offseason champs for 20 years running. But yeah, no, definitely think Florida can pull it off. But we got to see. I mean, Miami still has like Bain and you mentioned pretty good D line, and Florida's having questions on one side of the line, reportedly. Now there are people saying, no, it'll be fine. But they said that last year and the line was terrible. But I think that's where some of the offensive changes we talked about, like Russ Callaway coming in, who's got not coming in, but his promotion being kind of a new type of eyes on the system and bringing some of the air raid concepts like 0-1 step drops rather than running so much play action. Like I think I brought up running 70+% play action out of pistol when we did throw last year. And if you got a bad offensive line, that's, you know, penalizing your line because it's like, you're not great, but block for longer while we fake the run and also fake the run block. So now you've got run block, then pass block. Let's make it more difficult on you, where I think he can bring the, you know, we will run the quick, you know, 3-yard hitch route on a 0-1 step drop, or the quick slants where we only really ran slants for the most part last year. I think 80% of them or something was on third down when it was kind of predictable. So I think Russ Callaway will bring some of that and help out things that take pressure off the line. And if we can do that to help open up run lanes, I think, and get to Ward, I think it's going to be a very good chance for us to pull it off. I don't think, honestly, that Florida blows them out. I'll be happy to be wrong, but I think this is one that could come down to a close game, and I think in a close game, I'm going to go with home field advantage. Like, that's just how I feel. And again, I'm also in the camp of, if you're Billy Napier, you got this going the right way, you win this game in front of your fans in week 1. But
I think for me, it's going to be a battle of the lines, right? So to your point, Jesse, Cam last year was running for his life. So the question is going to be, what does that offensive line look like for Miami?
It should be good. They got talent up front.
It should be. They always have talent. They always pay for talent, right? Those SPACs are paying off, right? But at the end of the day, those SPACs are leading to sacks. And what I mean by that is, you like that, right?
Very nice.
So, you know, that NIL program isn't getting the offensive linemen that they need. They're paying a lot of money. They're getting a lot of talent. But, hey, Mario Cristobal, it's up to you and your coaching staff to put it all together and to get the most out of that line and give Cam Ward the time that he needs where he isn't scrambling for his life. And he has been. And so if he continues to do that, we all know that leads to turnovers, right? Everybody knows that a scrambling quarterback, by and large, especially if you're throwing across your shoulder or doing whatever you're doing, right, across your body, it's going to lead to turnovers. And the velocity of the balls, you can't get your feet set, unless you're throwing a quick slant or something to a running back or something like that. If you're throwing down the field, it's going to lead to turnovers because your ball is going to float in the air. And it's going to float to the point where it gives time for the defender to close the gap. So I think that's going to be the big thing, is to see how Florida's defensive line does against Miami's offensive line. And if they can't give Cam Ward time, that means that they also can't run. And he's most dangerous, if he gets a good passing game going, but he's most dangerous with his feet and being mobile. And if they can't run, they've got no chance. And so I think the game stops and starts, it begins and ends with that defensive line, because we don't know what we're going to get out of Florida's offense yet. We know that we're going to get, probably some dink and dunk to kind of break it up so that they can run a little bit more, right? So get the secondary on their heels a little bit, so they have to question, what their coverages are going to be, or whether they're going to, try to blitz. But I think that's going to be the game. I think it's the defensive line and how well they can stop and put pressure on Cam Ward.
Yeah, and I will say that, Roger, I think you were familiar with the new DC at Miami is very aggressive. I think it's Lance Guidry or something like that. I know he likes to blitz. I know he's a very aggressive guy. So, Florida, if you have a bad offensive line, they're probably going to try to expose that. And so I think that's going to be a big part of the game. But again, if you bring the house and you don't have a great secondary, if you just run those blitz beating routes and you can get the ball out in space, I think Florida has a chance. I think Miami has a good run game, and their receivers are pretty good with Restrepo, and I think it's Jacoby George is the other kid. Yeah. It's just I think you're going to have to get back. Like we said, Roger talked about how when you're a scrambling quarterback, you're going to take sacks because you're just trying to make something happen. And I think a lot of that has to do with what happened at Washington State. It's just he's trying to make things happen on a team where he's probably the best player on the team.
Right.
But
easy.
I think, but if you can pressure him and you can just force him to make mistakes, we talked about this with the Georgia Tech and Florida State game where you only got 7 possessions. And even if you throw the ball a little bit more, you might get 10 in a game. So I think now you're going to see a heightened sense of if you commit 2 turnovers, you might only get 6 or 8 possessions in a game. So I think whoever wins the turnover battle in this one will have a decided advantage in the game, because it may come down to that who has the ball last, like it did our game.
And home field advantage will definitely be a difference maker because they're playing in the swamp. So for me, I think if you've got a close game like that, as long as Cam Ward doesn't get free and it's kind of even when defensively, I think I give the nod to Florida just because you're at home. There's a reason they handicap you with a 3-point advantage at home. And I think with the swamp, it's even more so than that. First game of the season, it's Miami. It's going to be lit. People are going to be loud. I really think they'll have the crowd behind them, and that'll be an advantage.
Yeah, and we know Miami's not used to playing in front of actual fans. So
no,
it's going to be a new experience for them.
Now, hold on. There are a lot of teal-clothed fans at Miami games. There's more fans there than you think, right? But
they like to dress like Jaguars.
Or Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. Well, you get that buy a roast chicken at Publix and get 6 game tickets for free or something like that. Specials.
Oh my gosh!
Miami all the time.
Oh, I thought you had to do crab legs.
Well, that's only in Tallahassee.
That's Publix. That's the Publix special. No, it's like we were talking about the cows earlier. They when we were in the AAC, you go to the local donut place, right? In the local donut place, they give you you get a dozen donuts, you get 2 free cows tickets. So that's literally how they got their gate, because they may have averaged like 5,000 to 7,000 fans. I don't know how that program's still around, to be frank, but
they're getting their own stadium.
Eventually,
One day.
maybe, possibly. They keep pushing it back. They don't have the fundraising that they need for it. But this show's not about the cows. I will say this. It should be an interesting game. I'll be watching. I am rooting for Florida because I want our game to be that much more meaningful. With FSU kind of trying to figure things out, that leaves an opportunity for another team to kind of rise up again in the state of Florida and claim themselves kings. And for the first time for UCF, I think this is a season the Gators are trying to find themselves. Florida State's trying to find themselves. Miami, who knows what you're going to get out of Mario Cristobal and the Canes. I think there's an opportunity with us playing this year at the Swamp if we win again. And with FSU and UF obviously playing later this year, there's an opportunity for us to make that claim as a P4 conference without hearing in the media, well, why don't you play somebody or get in a better conference? Well, guess what? We're in a better conference. By the way, they don't hand those invitations out. It's an opportunity to make a statement for UCF football for the foreseeable future and on the recruiting trail. So I'm hoping the Gators beat Miami, and I hope you beat them badly.
Amen
Definitely.
to that.
Amen. And plus, also, Miami losing is a victory for America. But with that said,
Exactly.
And we're
let's get
patriotic here. See my
That's right.
flag?
Yes.
let's get to the Monday Night Mayhem. And Jesse, tell us about that Boston College matchup. We talked about.
Massacre.
Yeah.
That's where you're going.
I'm hoping it depends on which way that goes. I'm hoping it's a massacre. I don't think it's going to be the case, but yeah, man, I'm nervously excited for this game because I think it's going to show us, was the Georgia Tech game a fluke or was it who we are this year? And so when you look at that Boston College team, I mean, again, man, you go back to last year and the way Thomas Castellanos kind of went off on our defense, and that game, it was really close at the end of the game, but it was 31-10 at one point close to the end of the game. And then we had some mistakes and they came back. Now, our defense last year, for most people that do or don't know that follow FSU closely, they were flu-ridden in that game. I mean, it is what it is. They had guys throwing up and all that stuff before even the game. So there was that factor in there too. But I think a flu-ridden defense in 2023 is probably better than the defense that we have in 2024, or at least as they were in week 0. So this one makes you a little bit nervous, man. But we have won, I believe, like the last 7 in a row at home against Boston College. The last time we played them at home, it was 44-14. We opened with a kickoff return for a touchdown and never looked back. I do think that there are some kind of things in this game that are interesting where you look at now they have film on us. We don't have film on them. Do you watch Alabama film? Do you watch Boston College film? Do you kind of combine the both when you're talking about a new staff on a new team? But we've also had a chance to work the kinks out. And you're talking again about a team with some new pieces that are coming into a new season under a new staff with all new coordinators. So it's going to be interesting who who can get in rhythm and make less mistakes. I think that's really what it's going to come down to. But for me, Florida State has to be more physical in this game. That's really the answer. You have to take the game to them. You can't do what you did last time. And like I said, man, when we talked about the Georgia Tech game, there was a lot of stuff that I know the coaches aren't coaching these guys to do this. I know they're not. So it's things that they have to clean up. I think they have a better idea of what they can do now. We saw some changes on the depth chart where you had oars, and now those oars are gone. Some of the guys who were the oars are now the starters. I think we got a couple of I don't want to talk bad about our players, but I think some of the guys we didn't want to be starting to begin with got the start in that game, and now they're not listed as the starters on the depth chart. So I do think that will help as well. I think they know what they need to do now. They know what they got, and I know Georgia Tech had to deal with the travel. I know they had to deal with everything like we did, but I think you come home, you get a game at night in front of your fans, you have a chance to clean some things up. I think it's going to be close. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Castellanos had 1,200 yards on the ground last year. He scares me. He put up 400 all-purpose yards on us last season. I think it's going to be closer than people think. I have us at like 31-23. I know that's a little scary. I mean, I'm hoping that I'm going to be at the game Monday night. I can't wait for it. I'm hoping to jump with excitement and not jump off the stadium because we're 0-2 against two of the not greater teams on our schedule. Because, you still got Miami, you still got Clemson, you still got Florida, Notre Dame's down the road on that schedule. So you got a lot of tough games ahead of you. Again, man, I think this is really a fork in the road of your season. Like if you come out and you beat BC, you feel good about where you're at. If you hammer BC, I think you feel great about where you're at. If you lose to BC, buckle up because it's going to be a long season. So really, I think the key is going to be to stopping Thomas Castellanos on the ground. Make him throw the ball to beat you. They don't have an elite receiving core. They have a good line. They have good backs. They're going to try and pound the ball. You have to control the line of scrimmage and stop the run game. My biggest concern in this is our linebackers, because I don't know that we have the linebackers to contain Castellanos. When you look at our best linebacker, DJ Lundy, he's a great run stuffer, but he's not that fast. So if you get him in space, he's just not that fast.
That's your ends too, right? They've got to protect the edge,
and we didn't do that against Georgia Tech. And we didn't. And I think one of the problems, too, is when you look at like Patrick Payton, I mean, he's proven to be good, but he's also had Jared Verse on the other side of him where, Jared Verse was a guy, like if he couldn't get to the quarter, if he couldn't get around the offensive tackle, he sacked the quarterback with the offensive tackle. He would just push you into the tackle. And Patrick Payton's a little lighter. So like he just doesn't really have that edge setter type of power. And then you have Marvin Jones Jr. on the other side who had a couple flashes in the game, but maybe wasn't quite what we thought. But you're right, man. It's to contain. It's setting that edge. And then, last year we tried to put a spy on him a little later than we probably should have, but we had Kalen DeLoach who was fast, and so he could run him down in space. This year, I just don't know that we got that guy. I just don't. So it's going to be containing him. And then I think for us, BC had a pretty good pass defense last year, 26 in the country. Their new defensive coordinator, Tim Lewis, comes in with a lot of NFL experience. He likes his DBs to play very aggressive. So I don't know how much we're going to get through the air, but the thing is, they also had a terrible run defense last year, just like Georgia Tech did. And we only had 90 yards on Georgia Tech. Now, again, they had a new DC who's a Mike Elko disciple, so I expected their defense to get a lot better. You got to run the ball in this game. You have no choice. You can throw it to open up the run. You can't keep running into 8-man boxes. You got to throw the ball. You got to throw it enough to open up the run. But if we don't run for like 150 in this game, and we had 90 against Georgia Tech, if we don't run for like, because, let's be honest. Yeah. DJU's not throwing for 300 yards. It's just not in his wheelhouse. But if you can't run for 150 and you can't get some shots downfield to open it up, and Mike Norvell did acknowledge that this week. He said, look, man, we got to be able to push the ball vertically. We tried it horizontally. We got to go vertical. I think if you can do enough in the pass game to open up the run, I think we can come away with a win. But, man, anytime you have a guy with that kind of dual threat ability like Thomas Castellanos, man, it makes you nervous.
Let me throw some things at you. To your point on the wide receiver front, most of their wide receivers, with the exception of one, are between 5'11" and 6'1".
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to have a lot of speed wide receivers, right? I
will say the one thing on our defense that I'm not worried about is the secondary. That part I feel good about.
Yeah, and I don't think that's their strength either. The transfers that they got were from Texas Tech, Maryland, Lehigh, and Yale. So your wide receiver core, not too worried about that. I will say keep an eye out for Jordan McDonald. He was a highly rated running back. I know I mentioned him earlier. He's 6'1", 227. He transferred from us. The guy has not only wheels, but he has strength. So he's a guy that I would keep an eye out on as far as that's concerned. And then obviously Tommy C. I think the key for you guys is, can you do edge contain? If you can keep edge contain, and leverage what we call the night position or the nickel, to keep that edge contain, I think you guys are going to be in better shape, because if you can funnel them towards the middle, I think you're going to outsize them on the defensive line, because they simply don't have the size.
Yeah. And I will say the one thing that makes me nervous about this is when I started kind of diving into Bill O'Brien's offense, he's really big on matchups and working in space. And so what he typically likes to do where he'll put his fastest receiver in the inside so he can get that mismatch on the linebacker. And like I just said, our linebackers are the weakness of our defense right now. I mean, they certainly can get better, but right now it's looks like a glaring weakness. So if you talk about them getting that mismatch and exploiting it, that makes you nervous. But again, man, I did an interview with a BC guy earlier today, and he said, look, man, the thing is all offseason was, can Castellanos get better as a passer? They've said all the right things. They look like they've done the right things, but it's, we talked about with him. He's like, I can't really tell you that until I see him play a game because you never know what you're going to get. And I said, yeah, man, tell me about it. I know we did not know what we were going to get until we played a game. So again, man, I really think with this team, with Florida State right now, I'm in a holding pattern. I'm not freaking out about that Georgia Tech game until we see what happens in Boston College. But, man, I just think that if they can come out and get this win, if you win 24-21, it's not going to be a good look. But you get a win, you got a bye week, you got some winnable games that you can stack up. And, when you talk about Florida State's long-term outlook, we haven't seen anybody else play yet. You saw SMU come out, a game that we were calling a trap game.
Oh, they were
27.5-point favorite, almost got beat by Nevada. So it's like, you just don't know. You get this win, you get to the bye week, you clean some things up, you stack a couple wins, you're at home for the next 3 games. I think you can rebound. But, man, this game, I wish we had a bye week before this game. But, it is what it is, man. You got to strap it up and play. This is Florida State. You can't be scared of a team like Boston College. But, anytime, like I said, man, anytime you have that type of quarterback and you didn't play good against the run last week, we said last week, Georgia Tech, make Haynes King beat you with his arm. And we didn't do it. So you have to find a way to make Castellanos beat you with his arm because he will beat you with his legs.
And I want to say, Jesse, you talked about how can't always be running into 8-man boxes. You need to move it with the pass. You sound like me talking about our offense for the last few years. So good luck with those adjustments. I think now's a good time to talk about why I personally would like to see BC win. I mean, other than rivalry reasons, but since
totally understand.
Yeah, since we're at this part in the show.
Now would be the time to mute Jesse so that you can say whatever you want to say. I'm just saying, I'm putting that out there.
I can take it. It's all right.
I do want to read this awesome tweet, probably the tweet of the week from a FSU fan.
You mean the twat of the week?
Well, however you want to put it. But yeah, and I think this got picked up by Barstool Sports after 1.2 million views currently as I'm reading this. You have a fan, Jesse, that says, if Florida State loses to BC this weekend, I will eat dog crap out of a red Solo cup with a spoon and post a video of me doing it. There's just something about fandom that makes me not want to watch someone do that, but at the same time, man, you got to pay up on your bets at this point.
What's his Twitter profile name?
321 Noel.
That's
that's Cocoa Beach.
That's a level of confidence that I don't have to make a bet like that. If we lose to BC, I will feel like a red Solo cup full of dog poop. But I think I'm going to pass on eating that. We were talking about before the show. It's funny. They had the one fan that thought, said if Mike Norvell would upset UNC or something like that he would get cornrow Mike tattooed on him, and he followed through with it. I got to give him credit; he did. So I guess we're a fan base that pays up on our bet, but hopefully Mike has his back and doesn't make him do that because that's not going to be a good look. I feel like with 1.2 million views, you either got to just shut it down and delete Twitter and disappear forever, go into witness protection, or you got to own it up, man. You got to do it.
What you need to do is go on the Plant the Spear post game show and do it live.
Live stream it for them.
Live stream it for them on your post game show. You want to talk about getting tons of views from who knows where.
I'm gonna have to reach out now. I'm gonna make the connection. I don't want to watch it either, but hey, it is what it is.
It's a train wreck. You don't want to see it, but at the same time, you just can't look away from the situation.
Got that right.
I will say this: I don't know if this guy's real because his picture is definitely AI generated.
Yeah. Well, hey. I hope he doesn't have to pay up, man, because that's going to be bad all the way around.
Well, he's got a thick beard, so he's got a flavor saver for later if he needs to do it. So just putting it out there.
Sure.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh no, I was just saying for sure on that. But yeah, so do we think our three schools sweep the weekend?
I think UCF will do its part.
I think with UCF, it's like, will you cover? And what'd you say the spread was? 45-ish?
41 and a half.
I'll take UCF to cover. Man, I wish we had that.
I think UCF definitely could cover, but it's one of those things where
how long do you
it
leave
just
your
seems
starters in?
too good. And with how much the scores, I'm going to go under.
The other part is Gus Malzahn in the past, when we've had games like this, he's pulled back on the offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think at some
didn't want to embarrass people. That's the high school coach in him.
I will say I'll go with UCF to cover. I'll take Florida State to win in a close one. Daniel, love you, mean it. I think I might side with. I can't say it. It's a cuss word in my household.
With
I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm a Powerade guy. I can't do it. I will say, like I said, man, I hope
drink Gatorade.
It tastes better, but it is what it is. I do kind of. I would prefer. I can't say I want. I would prefer Florida to get this one, just because, like I said, you never know. You never know. Games got to get played. I see more L's on that schedule, so I would love to see Miami get taken down a notch, especially in the first one of the season. But it's going to be a tough one, man. It's going to be a good game. I'm excited. It's a great weekend of football. Clemson, Georgia, all that type of stuff going on. It's a great weekend of football.
Definitely. So, all righty. And I will go with my picks real quick. Definitely UCF. As much as I would like to see BC win, I'm going to, for said reasons, I'm going to go with Florida State at home. And, of course, I'm going with the Gators.
All right.
All right, that's the sound of we need to head out. So thank everyone for checking out Fourth in Florida. We'll catch you again next week.